Hello, everyone. It's Francis Widdowson here. Well, I'm feeling a lot better than I did a few days ago at the University of Lethbridge. That was something. And although I'm used to that kind of situation, unfortunately, my husband Albert was taken aback, and it caused him to be very, disturbed by what took place. But we're recovering from that ordeal. So that happened on February 4th, and I just wanted to go in under the radar without any kind of brouhaha that could accompany it. So I never announced it. I just did it like about an hour ahead of time. I just put out a note on Twitter, and then the university sent an email to all the students, faculty, staff, saying that this controversial figure was on campus, and they had very upsetting ideas, and mental health supports were available for anyone who was, disturbed by this situation. Anyway, all these people, when they got this email, went on the hunt for me and Tony Hall, and it was quite amazing. And anyway, I just spent some time on Greg Wycliffe's channel. He was doing a overview of everything that occurred. So I encourage everyone to check out the TikTok videos. So in all my scouring for coverage of the Lethbridge debacle, I forgot about TikTok. So I'm going to have to go back into the TikTok and see what went down, because there was some footage angles that I have not seen. And what I especially want to see is the ripping apart of the table. So what happened, this is kind of funny. The cops encouraged me to go sit at the table, I guess, so that they could contain everyone together, so they could better protect us. And I sat down at the table, and I noticed Tony was writing on some notepads, some things. And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. I can't speak because it's too much noise, but I'll be able to write on these pads. So I was writing on these pads, Orwell's quotes, things like, freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. And as I was writing these things, and ironically, I wrote, what was it? Bullies can't win. And I have an artifact here. That's what I wrote later. And I hold that. I was, holding this up, to everyone. I was, doing this, and that happened later. But before I did that with that sign, I wrote bullies can't win and these things. Anyway, this enraged the crowd that formed around the table, and they ripped the pad out of my hand. They ripped my pens out of my hand. They ripped the tablecloth off the table. They threw the table down the room, so the table disappeared. I was just watching this going, yeah, okay. This is completely unhinged. So that was very interesting. Anyway, I'll do more on the Lethbridge situation in a few days when I get the coverage together. But what I wanted to talk to you about was the Mount Royal University appeal before the Labour Relations Board, which happened on February 6th on Friday. It was the whole day. And Kathy Drake is on the call here, as is Daniel Page. Both of them got Zoom links. Kathy was, live tweeting out all the details. Anyway, that was unbelievable. That whole thing. It was, as I said, I think it was 6 hours, 3 hours for the union lawyer and 3 hours for the MRU lawyer. And Leanne Chawley, who is the lawyer for the union, she did an excellent job. My hat goes off to her. She was great, and she has pronouns in her bio. So it kind of, everyone who sees that goes, oh, wonder how this is going to go. But she's very, very competent and argued it very, very well. The problem is, however, is that my union, the MRFA, is unbelievably treacherous, and it sabotaged my case from the beginning. And I found this out in our arbitration. And the reason is because 3 cry bullies, D.A. Dirks, Gabrielle Weaselhead, who then was going by the name Gabrielle Lindstrom. Gabrielle Weaselhead is her maiden name, and Renee Watchman, and cry bullies, especially Weaselhead and Watchman, because they attacked me, and then they go, oh, I'm a victim, when I was just satirizing their attempts to get me fired. And they were also part of an anonymous Twitter account that was defaming me, but behind a sort of a wall of anonymity. Anyway, these individuals were arguing that my actions was making them feel unsafe, and therefore Mount Royal should investigate me. And Mount Royal was reluctant to investigate me because social media was not part of their workplace policies. They said this in December 2020 to Milena Razankowska. So they already had announced this. Anyway, when it was me who was involved in social media, this wanted to be changed. And what happened was grievances were filed against MRU for them not taking action against my satire, which was making Lindstrom and Dirks feel unsafe. And so when these grievances were filed, that's when MRU was kind of forced, or felt that it was forced, to investigate me. So the union never appealed the harassment findings against me because they wanted me to lose on the harassment. And they wanted, so that Lindstrom, Dirks, and Watchman, it would be found that MRU hadn't done enough to protect them from an unsafe work environment. So the case is extremely problematic already, because the harassment findings cannot be appealed because of the union favoring Watchman, Dirks, and Lindstrom. And I'm going after the union for this situation, but I have to wait until I'm done with the actual case. And because of that, the actual case is very weak in my defense. So it's just a really problematic situation. So in spite of that, Leanne Shawley did a great job. I think she did the best as she could with what she had. So that was one of the uplifting aspects. The other great aspect was the MRU's case. This is painful. So MRU has no case. It is idiotic. It is completely idiotic. And Michael Ford, who is the lawyer for MRU, who's a bit of a rough diamond, and I must admit I have a bit of an affection for the guy, because he plays dirty. He makes no bones about it. He uses all these rhetorical strategies. For example, he kept on saying that I was a bully when there was no findings of bullying against me. But, you got to admire his spunk. He's got a lot of spunk, and I admire that. Anyway, he spent 3 hours going through all these things, and the best was, and we weren't allowed to record these proceedings. So I had to take, very, very, I tried to take the best notes that I could, the most detailed ones. So I'm not 100% sure I'm exactly what's what, but he put up a whole bunch of documents that he had from exhibits that he was showing. And these documents are the greatest hits of my crimes that I have committed. So they wouldn't have selected the worst ones that they had. They would have selected the best ones, the ones that made me, showed me to be the monster that Gabrielle Weasel had, D.A. Dirks, and Renee Watchman, and Mary Lee Mulholland. We can't forget her. Like, everyone's claiming that I did all this terrible harm to everyone, and therefore I can't be reinstated. Anyway, so the things that they showed were all my wokeacademy.info website types of postings, and my articles, my scholarly articles in the journal Minding the Campus, which is a journal put out by the National Association of Scholars in the United States, and the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship newsletter as well. So there was these articles. So when I was going into this arbitration appeal, I was a bit worried because, you do make comments on various contexts, and you can't remember exactly what you said. And so I was thinking, maybe I said some horrible thing that I forgot, and this is now going to be, gotten through various, examinations of the internet and so on. But anyway, but there was nothing. Zero they got. And I'm just going to run through what I saw them talk about. So the first thing that Michael Ford put up there was Exhibit E92 about the Renee Watchman complaint. And that's that's episode 1 of the wokeacademy.info site. And all this does is just detail what Renee Watchman did. So it doesn't even have an opinion. It's just like factual. Renee Watchman did this, and then she did that, and then she did that, right? This is, according to Michael Ford, an attack on Renee Watchman. So I was like, this what are you talking about? And then my paragraph long thing, which is, was Renee Watchman's complaint against Francis Widdowson emboldened by university indigenization? I did this kind of summary of this situation. Again, an attack on Renee Watchman, when her complaint was emboldened by it. Like, if you listen to Leon Shawley in her defense of me, she's reading out the Jeffrey Hope report, which was Renee Watchman investigations, her complaint against me. Renee Watchman had all these complaints about how I criticized indigenization and how this was terrible, and how I didn't capitalize I in Indigenous, and I referred to diversity, equity, and inclusion as DIE. These were all things that Renee Watchman thought that I should be, punished for. So that's what indigenization does, is it says that Aboriginal people their ideas should be protected, their ways of knowing should be celebrated. And that was another kind of mark against me I've done, according to Michael Ford. And then the best one, episode 12 on the wokeacademy.info site. Did Gabrielle Lindstrom harass Francis Widdowson? And for people who don't know this, Gabrielle Lindstrom instigated the mobbing against me. And she just went after me. I've got like all the tweets that she tweeted calling me evil and all sorts of things, and just complete character assassination. So what I did is, when she was trying to get me fired because when she started it's because I was defending Wendy Mesley's reference to Pierre Valier's book, White Niggers of America. So I was saying that's ridiculous that you can't say a book title, and I was talking about this anyway. Gabrielle Weaselhead went, aha, racism. This is obviously racism. And she was trying to get the president to go after me and all sorts of stuff. So she just mounted this entire campaign trying to get me fired. That's harassment. But she left MRU because she felt unsafe. And because she left MRU, she couldn't be investigated for harassment. So I had to go through an investigation that she started. But because she left, I couldn't file a harassment complaint against her. So Anyway, and the other thing too about Gabrielle Lindstrom Weaselhead is she broke confidentiality and spoke to the Calgary Herald, and this was mentioned in the arbitration appeal. And MRU directed me not to reply. That I was under a gag order and couldn't reply. Gabrielle Lindstrom did this under and on. The Calgary Herald allowed Gabrielle Lindstrom to be anonymous, so we didn't know it was her. But in arbitration, we got Gabrielle Weaselhead's resignation letter, which she had provided to the Calgary Herald. So I know it was Gabrielle Weaselhead who did this. So Gabrielle Weaselhead was the instigator of everything, and I'm just and was, well, sort of painting that I had done all this harm and everything. So Mount Royal, I'm entitled to defend myself. I'm entitled to protect my reputation that is being destroyed by Gabrielle Weaselhead. There's nothing wrong with that. So that was a big crime, evidently, exposing Gabrielle Lindstrom's harassment of me. And then another minding the campus about fighting back against Big Brother's love, which was about MRU constantly demanding that I accept responsibility and show remorse for my conduct. I will never, ever accept responsibility or show remorse because I've done nothing wrong. If you've done nothing wrong, you shouldn't accept responsibility or show remorse. And doing this is just like, Winston Smith being in room 101 being tortured by O'Brien. Like, it's like, you must show remorse. You must show remorse. Like, no, it's never going to happen unless you put a gun to my head, and then maybe we'll talk about that situation. Next one, my use of the bird. I'm not sure if you've seen the bird with the frog in its mouth. I love it. So there's a bird. It's like a pelican or something. It's got a frog in its mouth, and the frog is grabbing around the neck of the pelican, and it says Francis Widdowson on the frog, and then MRU on the pelican. So that was another terrible thing that Francis Widdowson had done. That means that she cannot be reinstated. Like having a sense of humor, which, I think I'm entitled after 6 years of abuse that I've endured by, MRU and the union, having a little bit of humor about the situation, God forbid. And then it's a Minding the Campus article about when satire becomes harassment. The terrorization of Francis Widdowson by MRU's Human Resources Department. That's when Michael Quinn lured me into a classroom after hours. And then when I tried to leave because the union wasn't there, I was demanding union representation, which is supposed to happen at any disciplinary meeting. He stepped in front of the door and blocked my exit from leaving, blocked me from leaving. And that, because of my history and various contexts, it just completely, was terrorizing me and made me just completely freak out to the point that I called 911. Like me talking about this, what they did to me, this means I can't be reinstated. And then about MRU's rigorous due process. So I'm talking about all the violations of natural justice and procedural fairness that went on. And this is another part where my case is really flawed, is that the union never appealed the procedural grievances. So Michael Ford, of course, uses this in his arguments, which, that's actually a good strategy. But the union didn't appeal the procedural grievances because if they did, it would mean that my harassment findings would be thrown out. And they don't want those harassment findings to be thrown out because they want me to be found to have been engaged in harassment so that they can give Dirks, Lindstrom, and Watchman credibility in their arguments. And then Minding the Campus article, exclusionary inclusivity how the Mount Royal faculty's woke faction coerces conformity, which I'm talking about the union, the capture of the union. And and this is a big part of MRU's case. They say that I can't be reinstated is because I have shown animosity towards my union. You know, this is the union that did not fairly represent me, sabotaged the case, and I'm trying to draw attention to this because my case is so flawed that everyone thinks that I was guilty of harassment because the union wants me to be found guilty of harassment. And I've got to let people know the reason why this has happened is because of the union. And that's the only way I can do it. So, you know, again, I'm being punished for trying to set the record straight and let people understand the terrible things that have happened over the last 6 years. Amazing. So they highlighted a bunch of stuff in that article saying that I've got a problem. You know, I'm criticizing my union. I'm attacking my union. And in our collective agreement, we're protected. We're allowed to criticize our union. That's written into our contractual kind of framework. More minding the campus articles, the rejection of the rule of law, sort of these procedural fairness questions. And again, criticizing the union is seen as being a huge problem by Michael Ford. Yep, and this is just more things that he is talking about in terms of the union, my problems with the union. And then in April 2021, which was when I was still working as a professor, I wrote an article in the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship newsletter on how reified postmodernism is killing the Mount Royal Faculty Association. And Michael Ford, I think, actually said in the hearings that I was saying that the Faculty Association should be killed. So, you know, he's kind of sneaking in this kind of thing that I have violent wishes towards people. I'm not sure if that was just an unintentional slip, but he kind of does that. You know, he has these sort of, you know, rhetorical flourishes, and actually he's I believe Leanne Jolly accused him of being hysterical at one point. Oh, it was too much watching this. Oh yeah, all my problems with the union. And then episode 11 of my Woke Academy site, is the Mount Royal Faculty Association acting in good faith? No, they are not. And so this is a problem. Saying this, again, it's my difficulties with the union that took up most of his kind of case. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else. Again, the failure of a duty of fair representation, that was singled out as something to be, you know, my crimes. I mean, I can't be reinstated. And let's see what else here. Oh, how I was getting my lawyer. So this is on my fundraising site. I was talking about how my lawyer, I was getting my lawyer. I'd hired a lawyer to go get documents about the union, showing that the union had been engaged in actions against me, which I was doing. I was trying to bring that into the arbitration, but unfortunately, it would have really delayed things if I'd done that. So I always had to be making these decisions about whether I should just be going after my case or should I be going after the union? What was the best tactic? And I've decided that it's best to just go through my case and then we'll deal with the union after the fact. Maybe that was a bad decision. Maybe should have gone after the union. Anyway, that's the union. I'm just looking if there's anything else besides the union. Yeah, this is more about the lawyer, getting the lawyer to do something. And then this is really quite amazing. The MRU claims one of the reasons why I should not be reinstated is because I said my case must be won and I will fight to the end to make the university an academic space once more. This is what I'm doing. Mount Royal University is not an academic institution anymore. It panders to the indigenization activists, the trans activists, and a number of other political factions, activist elements. We need to stop that at Mount Royal University. We need to figure out how to do that. I'm calling upon the government of Alberta to hold a public inquiry about universities, because that's a huge problem, as we saw at the University of Lethbridge. They say at the University of Lethbridge that you cannot discuss the question about whether the residential schools are genocidal. And Tony Hall, who I was going to be discussing this with, argues that the residential schools are genocidal. He has the opposite position to be, and we are going to, examine that. A whole bunch of crybullies and thugs and just deranged people showed up and basically said, you got to get out of here. You can't talk about this. That's because the University of Lethbridge is not an academic institution. And so this is the problem which we need to sort out. And that is what I'm trying to do. Why should I not be reinstated at a university? Because I'm trying to make them into academic, restore them to being academic institutions. What possible justification should there be for that? And we never heard Michael Ford give a justification. He just thought it was self-evident. Well, it shows that I don't get along with people because I'm making these demands. And then he has the last thing that I saw is that he thinks goes against my ability to be reinstated is I think it was a Facebook post that I made where I said that I am demanding to be reinstated, and that this demand is to force a reckoning of whether MRU is a woke university or an academic institution. And that's completely true. That's what I'm doing. What's wrong with that? I don't understand. So that was MRU's case. Is that this was the evidence. That was the evidence that Michael Ford, the MRU lawyer, gave. These are the highlights. These are the worst crimes that I committed doing all these things. It's a mystery, except for just like there's nothing there. They just, that's all they've got. So this is what they're going to argue. Anyway, so this all went on. Once I get the notes are very tricky because I just did a lot of shorthand and stuff, and I have to go back and make sure that they're readable. But once I get the notes all straightened out, I'm going to post them, and they can form the basis for further discussions on this matter. And what happens now, you might be asking, is MRU argues that should be it. Like, it's already been done and it's really good. And they had the nerve to say at the end that, one of the reasons that we shouldn't go any further is because Mount Royal is under budgetary constraints and it's going to cost a lot of money. This is the organization that, due to its unbelievable incompetence, has spent millions on lawyers. This is just idiotic. Anyway, so they want to that's it. We've done the best we can. And the union is arguing that it should be sent back to another arbitrator, not the imperious and inept David Philip Jones, who was the arbitrator that we had, who was an absolute embarrassment, who gave no legal reasons, and was an absolute tyrant, yelling at my lawyers all the time and flying off the handle at favoring MRU constantly and all these sorts of things. And it's kind of an interesting question as why he was behaving in such a manner. And there's a few hypotheses. One is that everyone in Alberta legal profession is really chummy with one another, and CAUT brought in lawyers from Ontario. So there was this big kind of affront, like, oh, we've got these Ontario lawyers that we've got to deal with. Secondly, Arbitrator Jones was really pissed at Francis Widdowson because he wanted everything to be secret. And I was writing all these things on my wokeacademy.info site and, writing all these articles in various journals about my case. But there was no way I was not going to do that because my union was against me, and I'd been defamed constantly by Gabrielle Weaselhead and Renee Watchman. So I'm not just going to let them say all these things about me and not respond. And then the third one is he's one of the bigwigs in the Anglican Church. That was a third possibility. And the Anglican Church is got its nose up the indigenization kind of matters, quite extensively, and all these kinds of bringing native spirituality into the Anglican Church. So it's possible he's got some kind of woke sensitivities to the indigenization agenda. But anyway, if it goes back to him, it's going to be painful. But we're hoping for a new arbitrator. We've argued for a new arbitrator. And because Jones had this breach of natural justice where he didn't allow the union to make submissions on the question of whether the furniture was rearranged because of the terrible disruption that I did at the hearing, it was claimed that I was eye rolling and snickering and making comments under my breath. When that never happened. This is just made up by MRU. Jones just accepted that and wouldn't allow the union to make submissions to offer our position on it. So that's seen as a breach by my union, as a breach of natural justice. So I'm hoping that we will get it moved out of David Philip Jones's hands and into the hands of another arbitrator. But this is going to be at least 2 more years for that to happen. So, well, because they're going to have a year where they're going to have to get everyone together in the same room, all these lawyers, right? They got busy schedules. They're making, $500 an hour looking after all these other things. And the arbitrator has got all these other cases making hundreds of thousands of dollars on all these decisions. So here's, the poor Francis Widdowson's got to sit there twiddling her thumbs while everyone decides their fate. But I do not care. I've got now MRU's new bunch of nonsense that they put out on February 6th. That's going to give lots of grist for the mill, and I'm going to hit them, going to continuously hit them in terms of what they've done, because they should be absolutely ashamed of what they've done. It's just incredible that after, all this stuff started in November 2020, 5.5 years later, this is what they've got. The fact that I'm criticizing my union because my union did not abide by its duty of fair representation, and I say that I will fight to the end to make the university an academic space once more. Those are there, and I criticize my colleagues for trying to get me fired and defaming me. And I'm not even doing it personally. I'm just saying this is what they did. Which is what they did do, and everyone needs to know that I did not harass anyone. This is made up by a bunch of woke scolds, and I was just defending myself from them trying to get me fired. So that was that. Anyway, any questions people have? I'll just look at this. Let me look. I'm just going through here. Maybe you can put them at the end because I can't keep track. Anyone got any questions? Just put them in the. Any change, you will come up. Oh yeah, that's on my list. UNBC, University of Northern British Columbia. I think that'll be my next one, because I was talking to Drew Coover today, and he's in Prince George right now. Not that I'm going to go there in the next couple of days, but I think that's it. Because I went to Vancouver. I want to go to Kwantlen because it has Len Pierre as one of the professors there. That'd be a good one to go to. Vancouver's easier, but Prince George. Let me see here. A documentary. The documentary is going to be released before the 5th anniversary. So we're aiming for, because we want to have it out before the 5th anniversary of the Kamloops, the false claim at Kamloops. So my incredible videographer, Simon Hergott, is just working away. You would not believe how hard he's working to get all this editing done, which has just been a bit of it's been extremely onerous process, as you can imagine, because we have so much footage. Sudbury. Maybe. Why not? That's Laurentian, right? Sudbury, coming to Sudbury. MRU has rabies. Maybe. The thing is, and Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay had this argument all the time, whether universities have cancer and just need heavy treatment like chemotherapy, or whether they're rabies and they should just be ended, like just get rid of them because they need to be rebuilt. I'm acting as if they have cancer, although I suspect they have rabies. But I want to write down all the failures and test them. That's what I'm doing at Lethbridge. That was why Lethbridge was so important, is because that shows what's wrong there. Serious problems at the University of Lethbridge, and that's now all documented, right? Like, I was there just to do a Spectrum Street epistemology session with Tony Hall, and I get all these deranged activists show up and try and push us off campus. When I'm defending what the university should actually be doing, and the police should be defending me and defending the institution, but instead everyone sees me as the instigator and the aggressor and the person who's being confrontational, when they could have just, it was so low key when I was doing that initially. And if you watch my video, I did a live stream, you can see at the beginning, it starts off really calmly and talking to Tony and so on. Yeah. Legal class action suit against the universities that have facilitated the violence against us. I don't know how that works. The legal side is very problematic. It has some benefits. One thing is that you get production. So Daniel and I just got 500 pages of emails from the University of Winnipeg on the meltdown that happened there. And we're sifting through that. It's redacted, of course, but you get a lot of clues as to what went on. A lot of collusion between University of Manitoba, University of Winnipeg, and the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. Same with the University of Lethbridge, got very good production for the University of Lethbridge. And as well, you force the universities to actually have to make their arguments and not just hide behind a bureaucratic wall. So that's the other good thing. But what they do is they tie you up in procedures for years. And we're still waiting to go to court on the University of Lethbridge case. And that was in 2023. So I think that the legal side is got serious problems. Oh yeah, Edmonton. That's an easy one. Invite me. Yeah, Grant McEwen. That's a good one. Grant McEwen. I applied on a job at Grant McEwen, and I went there 3 times for interviews. And there was people opposed to me joining the faculty there. So I never got in to Grant McEwen. But Grant McEwen would be good. And University of Alberta, of course. Yeah, let's do some Spectrum Street epistemology. That's an easy one, because I just have to drive for 3 hours. Yep. Professors, see if there's any professors who want to invite me to the University of Edmonton, or sorry, University of Alberta. I went there. I gave a talk there in 2024. Kathleen Lowry invited me, and it was heavy security. So they brought in like the armed guards. It was just overkill, big time overkill. And then a bunch of spoiled brats showed up and grandstanded for about 10 minutes and left. And I was able to give the talk there at University of Alberta. But Grant MacEwan, I haven't done that yet. That'd cause a stir, because I'm sure Grant MacEwan is pretty woke, would be my guess. UBC Okanagan, yeah. And I have some good friends. I like Andrew Irvine is a good colleague. He was on the board for SAFs. There's the politics department there. Yeah, that's another good choice. Yeah, I should get. I tried to get Andrew to book me space, and he was on leave or something. Anyway, I should go back to that and see whether I can get a contact to book me a room at UBC Okanagan. Good suggestions. BC Cowichan overriding, yeah, the Cowichan decision. So the big problem is Aboriginal title, the whole idea of Aboriginal title, and more generally, Section 35. Section 35 of the Constitution has to be repealed. That's the big job, to do that, because the whole Aboriginal and treaty rights thing is just going to be an absolute Aboriginal industry cash cow for forever. So that's not helpful to anyone. It's not helpful to Aboriginal people. It just enriches the Aboriginal industry and the neo-tribal elites, and the marginalized Aboriginal people are even more isolated and marginalized than they were before, because they don't have the protections of the rule of law. Because, of course, tribal politics does not operate according to the rule of law. But that's been the Aboriginal industry's end game from the beginning, is to get Aboriginal title kind of entrenched. And now you can extract rent in the form, like you can get ordinary citizens to pay taxes to Aboriginal groups. And that's what it's all about, is just getting transfers, trying to get money diverted to Aboriginal groups to enrich the Aboriginal industry, to have more grievances and more legal proceedings. That's the circle of the Aboriginal industry. Yeah, UBC Okanagan. I got to recover from Lethbridge. That was a bit of a shock to the system. And yeah, so anyway, we'll see. There's also the trans activism thing that's heating up a little bit. I'm hoping to go to Montreal to participate in this event, which is trying to argue that, get penises out of prisons. No penises in the prisons, which is the problem of trans people. People men who identify as women being put into women's prisons, which is just shocking that that's happening. And that really hasn't gotten the level of public outrage that it should have. Like, you think that sports, which is a terrible thing, obviously, the men and women's sports, but the prisons, the men and women's prisons, you got the most vulnerable segment of society being subjected to, rapists who are pretending that they're women. It's just like, how could this be happening? This is just the madness that has taken over Canada. So that's happening in March. I believe that's happening in March. So maybe April, do a bit of a tour, University of Northern British Columbia, UBC Okanagan, do a few campuses. Depends on the documentary too. We're working on the documentary, and I want to get that. I want to make sure that I'm able to help Simon as much as I can. Not that I'm a help. I'm just more of dead weight. I'm dead weight around his neck, because he knows what he's doing, and I don't. Anyway, so that was lots of interesting things going on. The appeal, which I was amazed at, just at the complete lack of case that exists, and how I've been put through, 5.5 years of abuse, unbelievable abuse by Mount Royal University. But I'm in here for the long haul. And as I said, which Michael Ford thinks makes me unable to be reinstated, I will not back down from pursuing Mount Royal University to the end. There'll be no plea bargain. There'll be no buyout. This is going to go the distance, even if it has to go 10, 20 years, go through all the legal hoops. And we know a lot more now than we did, 5.5 years ago. We know the whole kind of story as to what happened. And it is a shocking abuse of process and an indication that Mount Royal University has completely lost its way. It was a wonderful institution in 2008 when I joined it. We had great administrators, Robin Fisher and Manuel Merton. They protected me. That's why I lasted as long as I did, because they stood up for me. They stopped the mob from forming, and then they left, and we got new, unbelievably, managerialist types and EDI types entered into it. And then the Truth and Reconciliation Commission came out with all their nonsensical stuff. And we were told that we had to incorporate all of these things into the university. And then there was, of course, the 2020 George Floyd incident, which, made the universities lose their minds. And that's when Gabrielle Weasel had, seized her chance and decided that she'd be able to take me down. And her and her allies, her associated psychopaths, and Machiavellians and woke scolds, etc., banded together and were able to push me out. But, hopefully I'm still here. I'm still fighting as hard as I was 5.5 years ago. So there's going to be a lot of blood on the floor before this is done. Anyway, thanks a lot, everyone. I'm glad to see everyone's following everything that's happening. I'll do a video on the University of Lethbridge situation when I take a look at the TikTok videos and get more footage. So thanks a lot for joining me, and I'll see you in a couple of days.